Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This episode is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing today? It is Monday, and it is absolutely gorgeous today here in Florida. I am checking my audio really fast. Sometimes I get on and the audio isn't quite working. So anyways, my friends, I hope you guys have a good weekend. I know that it is literally holiday season. And anxiety might be going a little bit through the roof right now because of all of the goodness that goes along with the holidays. For those of you that don't necessarily follow me or you're new to me, you may or may not know that I don't really do the holidays. I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and Jehovah's Witnesses do not celebrate the holidays, even though I am not practicing the religion. I still just decided to stay out of that realm of commercialism. And I can tell you from personal experience, it is a lot easier. It is a lot easier just kind of putting that stuff aside and not putting so much pressure on ourselves to be doing all of the things all of the time. So I'll leave that up to you guys. I do plan on doing some podcasts on that coming up about the stress of all of that, why I've decided to stay authentic to myself versus kind of falling into that. And, what we do during the holidays, what it feels like. And the money that we save and all of that goodness to be able to relieve a little bit of the stress off of you guys. But listen, today I am going to be talking about our inner child. For those of you that step in often to the Her Version podcast or the podcast for Human Better 365, there has been a lot of talk regarding inner child and inner child personal development and programs. And one of the questions that I have gotten a few times is like, what is this? What is this whole inner child dialogue that we're supposed to be having with ourselves? So I thought that I would kind of start out kind of easy today and kind of just break down what that means, what it is, some simple things you can do. And then over the course of the next couple of weeks, kind of add on to that. So make sure you stay in tune with this podcast. If you're not subscribed, we are on YouTube under Her Version, Sabrina Victoria. And then, of course, the Her Version website, Facebook group. And then the website is herversion.life. So for those of you that are in the middle of learning personal development, are just now coming to grips with it, that are seeing the goodness that it has to offer us, I highly recommend you to check us out, follow us, subscribe, and do all of that goodness, because I am constantly sharing amazing stories regarding all that. So super excited to be here and super excited to be talking about this. So the first thing that I kind of want to dive into is, the inner child. What is the inner child? What does it look like? And how to kind of go about healing the inner child. So listen, I'm sure there are all sorts. I could probably just take a poll right now with the people that are watching me live, the people that are watching me on replay. And I feel as if, the majority of people who are in the world would have some sort of gripe about how their parents decided to parent them. I think that's just part of growing up. So I'm certain that my parents have a gripe about how they were parented. And I'm sure my grandparents have a gripe about how they were parented. And I'm sure that myself, along with my sister, my brother, have their gripes about how we were parented. And I'm sure that my son will have gripes about how he was parented. And that's just part of it. The important thing to remember is that it's important to just try to do better than what you encountered. So it's not to say that anybody did anything wrong. It's basically to say, hey, listen, if you didn't really appreciate the way that things were done for you, then instead of repeating the cycle, it is your responsibility to then do better than what your parents did. So the whole pointing fingers and coulda, woulda, shoulda needs to kind of fly out the window. Once you get to a point in your life where you are taking ownership, taking your power back, there you have two decisions. You can either make a decision to live in the darkness of I am the way I am because my parents fucked me up, or you can live in the power of, hey, listen, wasn't the best childhood, pretty much kind of sort of sucked. However, I'm not going to let that define my entire future or my child's future, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So knowing that and being able to take that power back is kind of the step one. So step one is like acknowledging it. Acknowledge the fact that you have an inner child that may have gone through some sort of a trauma. Now, obviously, some traumas are way worse than other traumas. There are individuals walking around this earth right now that were raped by family members, raped by their own fathers, that were kidnapped, that are hungry, that have no food, that are being failed by the school system, that are in situations where their housing is little to none, living out of cars, living homelessly, living with mold, living with roaches. There are diseases. There are so many different levels of trauma that we are talking about. And it's impossible to get into the itty gritty bitties of all of the things that we've all been through. Religion is a big one that I am in and around a lot with talking to a lot of these females, as far as religion causing a lot of trauma and turmoil in people's lives and the way that they were raised. And this is the thing, the way that you perceived your life growing up is the way that you perceived your life growing up. Nobody can change it. Nobody can alter it. No one can say yes, but, or no, but to your perception of how you viewed your life growing up. So although, I had a hard time with this growing up, because it's like, or even realizing that this was an issue for me, because I'm very much an optimist, and I very much recognize that there are individuals on this earth that have it far worse, like far worse than I ever had it. So do I have a right as an individual to feel traumatized by a few things that happened in my childhood, knowing that there are other children that are starving right now, or other children that are being sexually assaulted or molested or raped, or that are sold into sex trafficking? Do I have a right to feel upset, traumatized, upset about the way I was raised, even though, yes. And that is one of the first things we have to acknowledge is, yes, of course, there are people out there that have had it far worse than you have. And you're allowed to feel upset about the way that you were raised or the things that happened to you, despite somebody else's perception of, well, yours isn't as bad or wasn't as bad as mine. Okay, so that's the first thing we have to do. We have to acknowledge that, yes, ours was not that bad. There are people that had it worse, yes, and I still feel as if there were some things that could have gone a little bit better in my life. And that's okay. That's okay. That is okay to feel, and that is a healthy way to feel. We need to feel comfortable with exploring our relationship with our inner child, what our inner child was thinking, how they felt when they were at the age of 5 or 7 or 9 or 12 or 18 or 20, because this is the fact. This is the fact. When you are 17, you are still a child. When you are 20, you are still a child. When you are 2, you are a child. So there's a whole range of emotions that could happen to us from the ages of 0 to 18, 19, 20 years old. There just are. There are so many stories that could have happened, and so many stories that you could have told yourself about what happened. So we need to acknowledge that. We need to feel compassion for our inner child, and we really need to start listening. Okay? We really need to start opening the door to the connection with your inner child. It's important to realize the feelings that may have happened during that time. And these feelings can come and go. These feelings could get triggered during certain circumstances. So the importance of realizing that there are feelings that your inner child could have had is the second step. That there could have been vulnerabilities that happened while you were younger. There could be guilt or shame that you feel. There could have been a lot of anxiety. There could have been abandonment. There could have been rejection. There could have been needs, emotional needs that were unmet during those younger years. And if you can actually trace those feelings back to a specific childhood event or specific childhood events, plural, then that could very well explain of the way that you react now as an adult. Okay. So let's say, for instance, something simple like your spouse, you have said something to your spouse several times. Your spouse forgets that you told them. And instead of sitting down and having a mature dialogue, you decide that it would be a good idea to abruptly get up, abruptly storm into your room and slam the door and fall into your bed all dramatic like, and just start crying in your pillow. Right? Now that me saying that out loud sounds very much like it could also be done by a little 2-year-old or a little 5-year-old or a little 9-year-old that was not listened to when they were younger. So that inner child that was never listened to is still within you and still reacting the same exact way that a child would react. So what we have to do is we have to unlearn things and then relearn things. So as a child, if you felt as if you were never listened to, everything that you said, you were cut off, you were interrupted, you were told that your feelings weren't valid, you were told that there was only one way of doing things and there was no other way of possibly thinking or doing or saying whatever the issue is. And then what did you have to do? You had to close your mouth and you had to leave the room. And usually you stomped off by yourself and you felt sorry for yourself and you dealt with your grief by yourself in your room, like a child. Now, what we have to realize, you and your spouse, the other person that is dealing with this, is we are now adults and communication is needed. It's necessary. So sometimes that is as simple as saying, hey, this conversation, what is happening right now is making me so angry that I feel like leaving the room right now and going into my bedroom and crying. That is how angry this conversation is making me. That right there, communicating how you feel, communicating what you wish you could do, is an amazing step towards healing that inner child. So you are recognizing how you feel and what you want to be doing, which would be seen as sort of like a tantrum, like a child throwing a tantrum because they're not being listened to, because they're not getting what they want ultimately. So ultimately what you want is you want to be heard. You want somebody to listen to you. You want to be able to say something, and the person that you are saying it to listens attentively and then shows progress towards doing whatever was said or done or what have you, right? So when you feel like that's not happening, what do? You walk away. I mean, you would run away and throw yourself onto your bed and throw a tantrum, just like a child would. So the first step would be to acknowledge that, hey, listen, I am feeling this tendency to literally throw a tantrum right now. I am taking everything in my body right now to not act like a child. That's allowing yourself to recognize that. That's allowing yourself to be aware of that. And that is you talking to yourself, talking yourself down. See, one thing that a child many times doesn't know how to do is they don't know how to calm themselves. They don't know how to rehash things. So as an adult, we can talk through things. We can communicate through things. We can actually write things down. One of the things that I love to recommend my clients to do is to write some sort of a letter, or even write some sort of a journal to either the person or to yourself. So writing a letter to your childhood self through an adult perspective. When I get angry, I have noticed that I tend to stomp out of a room, go into my room, slam the door, throw myself on the bed, and have a crying tantrum in my pillow. This is something that I have grown out of. This is something that I should not be doing anymore. Now I have the ability to be able to communicate. Now I have the ability to be able to express my feelings. Now I am with somebody who is capable of learning and listening to me. So now this is what I'm going to do. Instead of shouting, instead of throwing things like a 2-year-old, right? You're going to start talking about how you feel. I feel. You're going to start talking to your spouse or to the person who is triggering you and how they can support you. You're going to start telling them what you need them to do. Hey, listen, when I am getting these feelings, when I feel as if you're not listening to me, I feel like throwing a tantrum. I need you to, and I am going to. So I need for you to sit and listen when I'm having these feelings. I need you to take 10 minutes out of your day to sit down on the couch so that I can start unraveling this frustration that I have. And then what are you going to do? What do you promise to do? I promise to refrain from acting like that. I remember when my fiance and I first started dating, I had come from for those of you that listen to my platform here a lot, I had come from a very abusive relationship before I met him. And one of the issues that we were dealing with is I was so used to being on the defensive immediately because I was so used to everything being my fault. For the past 13 years, I had been blamed for everything. And I was at the point at the end of that relationship of just acting like a complete crazy person because I felt as if my entire life I continued to be in relationships with people who tried to control how I felt controlled how I acted, controlled how I spoke, controlled what I thought. And it was very frustrating for me. So I had come to this point in my life in my mid-30s where I didn't know how to speak my mind because I was so used to being in relationships where I wasn't allowed to speak my mind. So I had become conditioned to just acting like a crazy person, screaming, yelling, crying, locking myself in the bathroom. And I remember having an epiphany one day. And I was like, how am I supposed to expect this man to appreciate, love, and respect me as a woman if I continue to act like a child? And I actually wrote a letter to him, which maybe next week I'll bring it with me, but I wrote a letter to him, or a text, I guess, in the notepad that said, hey, I'm going to try really hard to not act like this anymore, because there's no way that I can expect you as a person, as a man, to be able to respect me as a woman if I'm throwing tantrums like a little child. So you can't expect people to respect you as a grown, powerful individual, a grown, mature, powerful, intelligent, brilliant individual if you're sitting around throwing tantrums like a little child and throwing things like a little child and locking yourself in bedrooms and bathrooms like a little child. So I had to make a decision. I had to make a decision to acknowledge my inner child, acknowledge that I was acting out just the way I used to when I was a little one. And then I had to make a conscious decision to rise up, to level up, to bring myself above, because I am no longer a child anymore. So one of the things would be writing to yourself, writing a letter to your inner child about how you are now leaving those excuses and leaving those attributes aside, and what you plan on doing going forward. Going forward, I plan on sitting. I plan on communicating. I plan on working on my tone. I plan on not throwing things anymore. Granted, I didn't throw things. Just saying that. But people do. There are people in relationships that just throw things. I was with somebody who would throw things like a little child across the room, or at the windshield in the car, or out the window, or across the room, like a child. And then they want to be respected like an adult. That doesn't make any sense. So the next thing, which is what I was kind of alluding to, is journaling. So one of the things that I've been doing every single Monday today, which I'm going to be doing later today, is reading from your journal. I've been reading from my journal. So I started keeping a journal when I was about 12 years old, and I kept it until I was probably, 22, 23 years old. And I am realizing while I'm going through this journal in chronological order, the mindset that I had growing up, the issues that I was dealing with growing up. You can see the amount of attention I was looking for because of the lack of attention. You can see where I was struggling mentally and emotionally. You could see where the drama was. You could see where the narcissism was in and around my friends and myself, learning from that. So one of the things that I highly recommend if you have children, one, is to recommend them to start journaling, because we want to make sure that we are giving our children a better future than our parents gave us. So have them journal, one. Number two, you should be journaling. You should be journaling right now. If you are dealing with this, if you had some stuff going on in your background as a child, when stuff comes up, you should be writing this stuff down. And what I've actually done is I have actually created an entire fleet of journals. specifically made with you guys in mind, that are powerful. They feel beautiful. They feel luxurious. Every single one of them, look at this, beautiful for inner child. Dreams and majestic thoughts that maybe your inner child was feeling. They are all matte finish. If you have brilliant boss babe ideas, and it's a way for you to be able to really sit down, really think, and really start to put your thoughts in order. Really start to plan out the way that you want to start leading your life. A way to be able to get all those thoughts down about what you do and what you don't appreciate in life. I have 10 different designs for you guys, and you can find them up here, amazon.com/author/Sabrina Victoria. They sell for $6.99. They're 100 pages, thick, gorgeous, beautifully binded, matte finish. They're absolutely beautiful. And I incredibly recommend you to just sit down and start writing your stuff down, especially during times when you're getting triggered, especially during times when you're really feeling vulnerable. Right at the beginning of an argument, right in the middle of an argument, right at the end of an argument, start to sit down and start to write your stuff in some sort of a notebook that is dedicated towards your inner child, that is dedicated towards talking to and talking out your feelings regarding abandonment, regarding vulnerabilities, regarding resentments that you've had in your life during your childhood. Now, you have to remember, if you're just joining me right now, this isn't about blaming your parents for anything, right? Your parents have gripes about their parents. You might have gripes about your parents. Your children are going to have gripes about you. That is part of it. That is absolutely part of it. Thank you, Christina. And that's part of evolving. And that's part of being self-aware. And it's part of realizing that there's a cycle that needs to get to break. So if you don't appreciate the cycle in which continues to happen year after, or generation after generation, as far as neglect, trauma, and anger issues that continue to cycle through generation to generation, it is then at that point your responsibility to start making some changes towards that. And one of the ways to be able to do that is to start to journal, is to start to write that down and really start to talk to yourself about how you were raised and how that has impacted you as an adult, and how it is now impacting your relationship, and how it is now impacting your children, because your children are watching you argue. Your children are watching you get triggered. And the last thing you want to do is to have your children suffering the way that you did suffer and are suffering. So you can't unknow what you know. You now know. You now realize, if you're listening to this, that yes, there are some things that I have dealt with from my childhood into my adult years. Yes, they are impacting the way that I am adulting now. Okay, so now you have a responsibility to really start to break that down, see what that looks like, and readjust and repivot the way that you are deciding to communicate in your life. So besides journaling, besides writing a letter to your inner child, meditation is another really awesome way that has amazing benefits towards your physical health and also your mental health. It really helps you boost your self-awareness. One of the things that I have so noticed within so many of my clients is the lack of silence in our lives. There is such a lack of just calmness and just silence, because everywhere you turn, there's the TV, Mom's talking, dad's talking, the dog is barking. There's advertisements getting thrown at us constantly, all of the time, constantly. Then you've got your kids talking. Then you're worried about dinner. Then you have your boss talking. Then you're talking to the neighbor. You have the radio going. You have a podcast going. Hopefully my podcast. Then you have Netflix on. Then your kids need to be doing homework. Then there's virtual. Then there's social media. Your phone's pinging every 5 seconds. The beeper on the stove is going. We're constantly getting bombarded with so much noise, and very rarely do we have a second to actually sit and actually calm and actually think about our thoughts and the things that are important to us as a person, as a human, as a powerful being, and why we act the way we act, and why we are reacting the way we are reacting. And a lot of that comes from past experiences, not being taught how to deal with those things. And I am here to tell you that that is okay. That is okay if you don't know how to deal. What the important thing is here, my friends, is to acknowledge it, so that we can then work on a different way of doing it. Just a different way of doing it. We're still going through the same exact journey. It's just reacting towards things differently, not allowing ourselves to be triggered during these certain things. And one of those things, like I just said, is meditation. It really helps you become more comfortable with unwanted emotions. Being able to sit, being able to really realize where you are and where your feelings stem from. So I want to read what Christina said here. She said, we can have compassion for our parents when we look at how they were raised too. Generational traumas, we are the cycle breakers. 100%. 100%. And that's what I was talking about earlier. So this isn't your mom and dad did a horrible job raising you. That's not what this is about. This is about you realizing that there is trauma, but then allowing yourself to be able to move past that. Healing our defiant or rebellious inner child too, the one who can keep us from doing the things that we want to do, but can't numb from. I love that, girl. I love that. So Christine Cardoza, she has actually been on my podcast maybe a month ago now. If you missed it, she did, I think, 3 ways to heal trauma, maybe. But if you go through our YouTube channel, you can find her. And she works a lot with inner child work. So I would highly recommend for you to check her out. And if you're reading through these comments, you can click on her name and go through her stuff, message her. She is brilliant and open to talking and communicating with all of you. We all have a story. We either look at it to drop where we're holding victim energy, lots of self-compassion. We have been through hard things, but are hella tough. Hell yeah. Totally. Excuse me. Yes, acknowledge where you are to know how to heal. 100%. Breath work. Yes, thank you, girl. Has been more helpful for me than meditation, calming my nervous system, doing one task at a time to heal disassociation. Appreciate you so much. Thanks, girl. Appreciate it. So I do want to say that breath work. Breath work is another awesome thing. And I am not necessarily going to get into that right now because that can go on forever. Christina is an expert at that. If that's something that you wanted to look into as far as that goes. And thank you for mentioning that, because that is not in my notes here. So I appreciate that. The last I want to talk about is leaving the door open. So allowing yourself to realize that healing doesn't have like a definitive end. It's kind of like an open-ended journey, and there will possibly always be times where you're needing to heal, where you're needing to really process and start reaching out. And the thing is there's going to be times in your life where I can relate to this, where I feel 100% healed. I am good to go. I'm going 100 miles an hour in one direction. I'm focused. I'm good. I'm feeling all of the things. And then all of a sudden, something happens and I'm completely derailed. And a lot of that is there's things that are said, there's triggers that happen. People don't even necessarily know that they're saying them, or realize that they're saying them, or trying to hurt you in that way. But sometimes that happens. So it's very, very important to make sure that you're cultivating a newfound, and you're continuing to listen as your inner child kind of guides you through your life and through that journey. And that is part of what I was talking about before as far as journaling goes. You want to make sure that when these new things are coming to bay, when these new rings in the onion are starting to open, are starting to blossom, that we are there to really feel them, meditate on them, write them down, and really start to analyze and figure out, oh my gosh, the reason I act like this is because of this. The reason this trigger does this is because of this. One of the issues that I had, and this explains exactly how juvenile this can be. So when, again, my fiance and I first started dating, one of the things that comes up often in relationships is, where are the car keys? And I know this because I've been in houses, I've been with friends. Where are the car keys? Where are the car keys? So I cannot tell you early on how much anxiety would come up in my body when my boyfriend, now fiance, would just simply ask me, where are the keys? Or do you know where the keys are? The amount of flood of feelings that would come up into my body, I can't even describe it. My heart would start racing. My mind would start going 1,000 miles an hour. I would start to shake. And the reason that is because my past experiences with car keys, whenever the car keys weren't in a very specific spot, there would be all of this crazy drama that would happen regarding car keys and regarding me being not organized. And it could have been that I didn't even misplace them. It could have been he misplaced them. But somehow everything would come down on me. We would be running late. I'm unorganized. Everything is now through the roof. We might as well not even go anymore. I can't count on you for anything. And all of this stuff would come pouring down on me. And I had no way out. It was always so traumatic. And what happened is, probably 6 to 8 months into our relationship, of this continuously happening with Dane, my fiance, finally, I remember it specifically too. I was actually on the floor. I was cleaning the floor. And Dane said, hey, where are the car keys? And all these feelings came up with me. I'm like, I have gloves on. I'm on the floor. I'm dirty. I'm cleaning. And I turn over and I go, hey, I need to tell you something. And he's like, what's up? And I explained to him this whole story that I just explained to you, and how him asking for the car keys, it just triggers me so bad. Now that did two things. It, one, allowed me to be able to put a voice and put a description behind the trigger. One. Number two, it allowed my fiance to be able to be compassionate for the fact that this is something that really frustrates me. So then we had to come up with a plan, right? A plan of okay, Sabrina, I now know that me just simply asking where are the car keys is causing you all this stress. So first, why don't we have a place in the house where we put the car keys? See, I was rebelling at this point because I didn't want there to be a place for anything, because I was like, I don't want to be responsible for them not being in that place, because when they're not in that place, that's when I would get in trouble. So I preemptively didn't have a place for the car keys. But after talking about it, I was like, okay, you know what? There should be a place for the car keys. So one, place for the car keys. We decided on that as a couple. So now I'm actually looking at it. There's a hook for the car keys right now. One. Number two, what is a better way for him to ask if the car keys aren't where they're supposed to be? And there's a couple different ways of doing that. One, lower the tone. Not that he had a high tone, not that he ever had an angry tone. His tone was always just, hey, where are the car keys? Like a normal tone. But I exaggerated it because of my past experiences. So one, he now knows to come at me with that question with, hey, honey, how are you? Hey, by the way, do you know where the car keys at? Where the car keys are at? So him taking the time just to kind of fluff that set that question with a little extra fluffiness makes it not so aggressive towards me. One. Number two, about 50% of the time, he comes at me in a very overly lovingly way. So he might come and give me a hug. He might come and like kiss me on the neck. He might like pat me on the butt and say, hey, can't find the car keys. Or, hey, do you know possibly where the car keys might be? So instead of a direct question of like, where are the car keys? And then me getting defensive, we came up with ways to be able to solve that problem and to cushion it for me so that both sides are assisted during this thing that's going on in my head. And what has happened over the course of the years now is now the probability of me getting triggered during this simple question that like all couples ask is like 1%. Like it hardly ever, rarely happens. It has to be like the tone has to be right, and that the maybe the vibrations in the atmosphere, maybe we're running late or something needs to be right for me to actually feel that same trigger that used to happen to me. But again, this is being aware of my inner child. This is high communication. This is problem solving. This is being able to come up with other solutions around what is going on. So be aware of that. Now, granted, the example that I just used wasn't childhood drama or childhood trauma, right? So, but I gave that example as far as the juvenile. That's like a juvenile thing that I was dealing with. But for me, it was so extreme. And these are things that we're carrying from our childhood into our adulthood, and then we're spreading through the next generation, through our children. So it's very important to recognize them, very important to journal. If you don't have a really nice, beautiful journal that you can dedicate to this, you can get these at the dollar store. You can get these at Walmart. If you want to help the channel and help support the channel, you can go to my Amazon account, amazon.com/author/Sabrina Victoria. The last thing I want to talk about is getting a coach. And that is what I am. That is what I am here for. And quite honestly, the clients that I deal with on a daily basis regarding getting your power back, regarding reorganizing yourself, reorganizing your time management, refocusing you as far as where you want to be going, getting rid of that past. So many of us are carrying so much stuff from our past. And I really, really want to help you just take all that off, that backpack and the dressers and the luggage and all of the heaviness that you have on top of you that you're just lugging around through your life. I want to help you take that off and just free yourself from all that extra. And we'll go through all of this stuff together. We'll meditate together. We'll journal together. We'll really break this down and help you break through those frustrations that are getting to you, that are keeping you back and keeping you from living your best and most fulfilling life. And I would love to do that with you. And if that is something that you are interested in, reach out to me anywhere at any time. I usually take on, pretty much about 10 to 12 clients a month. So just be aware of that. There's not always necessarily times, but I predominantly do one-on-ones right now. And the breakthroughs that are happening on a daily, weekly, monthly basis are just absolutely beautiful. They are absolutely gorgeous. And I would love for you to be a part of that and would love to be able to experience that with you, as far as relinquishing the power that so much of our past has on us and allowing us to move forward where we're actually supposed to be, towards our passions and towards our focus and towards things that really mean something to us and that are really going to benefit us, our spouse, and our family going forward. So I want to read, I love you so much and appreciate you so much. I am so glad that I found you, or maybe you found me. I don't know, but it has been my whole life until about 9 months ago. My life is forever changed. Oh, I love that. And I hate that I don't know who that's from. When you guys are commenting on my Facebook, make sure that you are acknowledging that StreamYard can help with or StreamYard can make your face known. I'll figure out who you are though, and I love you too. And I love that you've had change in your life and that you are where you are. And I certainly hope that you're pushing forward. And if you ever need any assistance, reach out to me. Thank you, love. I appreciate you. Listen up, folks. I so appreciate you guys. I appreciate everyone that's listening here live, and I appreciate everybody who is watching me on the replay. The Facebook group where I do a lot of this teaching is Her Version. It's a Facebook group. You can also follow me on Sabrina Victoria TV is my Facebook page. My website is right here, herversion.life. And to get my journals, amazon.com/author/Sabrina Victoria. And I just dropped 6 abuse journals. So if anyone here listening is in a narcissistic abusive relationship, physically abusive relationship, I just launched 6 designs for a beautifully disguised regular notebook that has prompts for abuse, for you to be able to keep records of that while you are working on freeing yourself from that situation. And I will be talking more about that at a different time. So I certainly hope that you guys are doing great. Thank you so much for joining me here at Her Version. I will be doing my journal reading later today. If you have an amazing story to share, I do guest appearances on this podcast Tuesdays and Thursdays. Be sure to reach out to me here or at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I am so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and allows people to inspire others. Do something awesome today. Much love.